The $50 million robot sparked and died mid-demonstration as 200 Silicon Valley investors watched in horror. Billionaire CEO Jonathan Whitmore's face burned with humiliation. He spotted Keisha Williams, the black custodial worker, observing quietly from the corner, and found his scapegoat. "Hey, Maid, fix this and I'll marry you." Billionaire CEO Jonathan Whitmore's voice dripped with contempt as he gestured at the smoking robot wreckage. Keisha Williams stood frozen by her custodial cart. The black woman had become Whitmore's target for humiliation in front of every camera in the room. "Come on, don't be shy," Whitmore continued, his smirk widening. "You clean up messes all day. This is just a bigger one." Cruel laughter rippled through the crowd. The $50 million Titan X7 prototype lay dead between them, circuits still sparking, hydraulic fluid pooling on marble floors. Keisha's grip tightened on her cart handle. Every face in the room stared at her like she was entertainment, not a person. Have you ever been so publicly humiliated that it ignited something unstoppable inside you? Technovault Industries towered over Silicon Valley like a glass monument to innovation. For 3 years, Keisha Williams had walked these halls in the shadows, invisible to the engineers and executives who shaped the future of robotics. She worked the night shift when the building emptied and the machines ran their endless tests. While others slept, she cleaned around the Titan X7 prototype's $50 million assembly robots designed to revolutionize manufacturing. Each unit stood 8 feet tall, bristling with hydraulic arms and precision sensors that could build everything from car engines to spacecraft components. The Titan X7 was Technovault's crown jewel, the centerpiece of a $500 million defense contract that would secure the company's future for decades. But for 8 months, the robots had been failing with increasing frequency. Keisha had witnessed every breakdown. She'd watched teams of engineers scratch their heads as hydraulic systems lost pressure without warning. She'd seen million-dollar consultants fly in from MIT and Stanford, only to leave empty-handed after weeks of failed diagnostics. She'd observed late-night emergency meetings where Jonathan Whitmore screamed at his technical staff like they were incompetent children. "These machines are making us look like amateurs." Whitmore's voice had echoed through the break room just last week while Keisha quietly emptied trash bins nearby. "I'm paying you people 6-figure salaries to solve problems, not create them." The engineers had sat in uncomfortable silence, too afraid to meet their CEO's glare. Dr. Mike Patterson, the lead engineer, had mumbled something about complex system interactions and electromagnetic interference. Whitmore had cut him off with a wave of his hand. "I don't want excuses. I want solutions. The Defense Department is breathing down our necks, and we're hemorrhaging money every day. These things don't work." Keisha had paused in her cleaning, listening to technical discussions that revealed obvious blind spots. The engineers were chasing electronic ghosts while missing fundamental mechanical issues. She'd noticed patterns in the failure's subtle changes in hydraulic pressure, calibration drift that compounded over time, maintenance protocols that actually made problems worse. But who would listen to a custodial worker? The first time she'd tried to speak up had been a disaster. During a particularly heated diagnostic session, she'd quietly approached Dr. Patterson with an observation about hydraulic fluid viscosity. The conversation had died the moment she opened her mouth. "Excuse me," Patterson had said, not unkindly but with clear dismissal. "We're trying to work here." Whitmore had been less polite. "Stick to mopping floors, sweetheart. Leave the thinking to people with degrees." The other engineers had chuckled nervously, and Keisha had retreated to her cart with burning cheeks. She'd learned to stay invisible after that, but she never stopped observing. The failures were getting worse. 3 weeks ago, a Titan X7 had seized during a client demonstration, its hydraulic arms locking mid-assembly while building a prototype jet engine component. The visiting Boeing executives had watched in horror as $50,000 worth of titanium parts scattered across the factory floor. 2 weeks ago, another unit had suffered a complete system failure during a video conference with Pentagon procurement officers. The robot had simply stopped responding to commands, its sensors flashing error codes that stumped every technician in the building. Last week, the failures had become catastrophic. A Titan X7 unit had experienced hydraulic rupture during routine maintenance, spraying pressurized fluid across the work area and forcing an emergency shutdown of the entire production line. Whitmore's stress had reached breaking point. The company's stock price had dropped 15% in 7 days. Trade publications were questioning Technovault's technical competence. Competitors were circling like vultures, ready to swoop in on the defense contract if Whitmore's team couldn't deliver working robots. "We're 3 weeks from bankruptcy," Whitmore had told his board of directors during an emergency meeting that Keisha had overheard while cleaning the boardroom. "If we lose the Pentagon contract, we lose everything." The board members had shifted uncomfortably in their leather chairs. Keisha had continued dusting the conference table, invisible as always, while listening to discussions about layoffs and asset liquidation. "What about bringing in external consultants?" board member Sarah Carter had suggested. "We've burned through $2 million on consultants," Whitmore had snapped. "MIT, Stanford, Carnegie Mellon, the best minds in robotics. They're all stumped." "Maybe the problem isn't technical," another board member had ventured. "Maybe it's management." The room had fallen silent. Keisha had seen Whitmore's face redden in the reflection of the conference table's polished surface. "Are you questioning my leadership, David?" "I'm questioning why we can't solve problems that other companies handle routinely." That meeting had ended with threats of board restructuring and lawsuits. Keisha had finished her cleaning and disappeared before anyone noticed her presence. But she'd been documenting everything. Hidden in her locker were 3 notebooks filled with detailed observations about the Titan X7 failures. She'd recorded timestamps, environmental conditions, maintenance schedules, and failure patterns with the precision of a trained engineer. Because that's exactly what she was. Her mechanical engineering degree from Wayne State University gathered dust at home while she pushed a mop through Technovault's halls. Her summa cum laude honors meant nothing when employers saw her name and address. Her expertise in hydraulic systems and precision manufacturing was invisible to a world that judged her by appearance rather than ability. But Keisha had never stopped learning. During her night shifts, she'd studied every manual left behind by careless engineers. She'd memorized the Titan X7's technical specifications. She'd identified the root cause of the failures months ago, but no one would listen to her observations. The robots weren't failing because of complex electronic issues or mysterious system interactions. They were failing because someone had been ordering the wrong hydraulic fluid for 8 months straight. The viscosity difference was subtle but critical enough to cause pressure inconsistencies that compounded over time and triggered cascading system failures. It was the kind of mistake that experienced engineers often overlooked because it seemed too simple. They were hunting for sophisticated problems while missing basic maintenance errors. Keisha could fix every Titan X7 unit in the building within hours. She could prevent future failures with simple protocol changes. She could save Technovault from bankruptcy and secure the Pentagon contract that would keep 3,000 people employed. But first, someone would have to see her as more than a woman with a mop. The morning of the investor demonstration had started like any other. Keisha had arrived for her day shift to find the building buzzing with nervous energy. 200 of Silicon Valley's most powerful investors were gathering to witness what Whitmore had promised would be the most important robotics demonstration of the decade. Everything had to be perfect. Instead, everything had gone wrong. And now, Keisha stood in the center of a conference hall, surrounded by cameras and cruel laughter, holding the key to solving problems that had stumped teams of experts. What Jonathan Whitmore didn't know was that his cleaning lady was about to save his empire and destroy his arrogance in the process. But what Keisha knew about those robots was about to turn this billionaire's world completely upside down. The truth was hidden in plain sight, documented in notebooks that Keisha had filled during countless night shifts. While Whitmore's engineers chased complex theories and expensive consultants provided worthless advice, the real solution had been walking their halls for 3 years. Keisha had grown up in Detroit, where her father, Samuel, had been a master mechanic at Ford's River Rouge plant. From age 8, she'd spent summers learning to diagnose problems by sound, smell, and touch. Her natural gift for understanding mechanical systems had emerged early. She could identify failing components that stumped experienced technicians. Her engineering degree had been hard-earned. Working multiple jobs to pay tuition, studying by streetlight when the electricity was shut off, graduating summa cum laude despite every obstacle society placed in her path. She'd dreamed of designing the robots that would revolutionize manufacturing. Instead, she'd found herself cleaning up after people who couldn't solve problems she'd spotted on her first day. The irony wasn't lost on her. Technovault's future hung in the balance, dependent on machines that were failing because of basic maintenance errors. The company was hemorrhaging money, investors were losing confidence, and 3,000 jobs were at risk, all because no one had listened to the woman with the mop. Whitmore's public humiliation had been the final insult. His marriage proposal wasn't just cruel. It was the perfect symbol of how he saw her, not as a skilled engineer with valuable insights, but as entertainment for his wealthy friends. He had no idea that his joke was about to become the most expensive mistake of his career. Keisha Williams had learned to read machines before she could read books. Growing up in Detroit's East Side, she'd spent every summer in her father's garage behind their cramped duplex. Samuel Williams was a legend at Ford's River Rouge plant, the master mechanic who could diagnose engine problems with his eyes closed. While other kids played video games, 8-year-old Keisha absorbed lessons that no engineering textbook could teach. "Listen, baby girl," Samuel would say, pressing his weathered hand against a rumbling engine block. "Every machine has its own heartbeat. You just gotta know how to feel it." He'd guide her small hands to different components, teaching her to sense vibrations that revealed bearing wear, to smell the difference between normal heat and impending failure, to hear the subtle changes in hydraulic pressure that preceded catastrophic breakdowns. "Most people are too busy talking to listen to what the machine's trying to say," Samuel would tell her during those long summer afternoons. "But if you pay attention, really pay attention, it'll tell you everything you need to know." That became Keisha's guiding principle. Listen first. Observe everything. The machine always tells the truth. By age 12, she could spot problems that stumped mechanics with decades of experience. A slight irregularity in timing belt tension, a barely audible whine from a water pump bearing, oil that felt too thin between her fingers, signaling internal wear that would soon become expensive damage. Her gift wasn't magic. It was methodical observation combined with deep mechanical understanding. While others relied on diagnostic computers and expensive equipment, Keisha trusted her senses and systematic analysis. High school has been a struggle. Academic counselors pushed her toward practical careers like nursing or teaching. They couldn't envision a black girl from Detroit's East Side designing the machines that built America's cars. But Samuel never doubted his daughter's potential. "You got something special, Keisha," he'd say while working late into the night, trying to keep their family's old Buick running. "Don't let nobody tell you what you can't do." Wayne State University's mechanical engineering program had been her escape route. 4 years of juggling multiple jobs, studying by streetlight when utilities were shut off, living on ramen noodles and determination. Her professors had initially questioned whether she belonged in advanced hydraulics and precision manufacturing courses. She'd answered their doubts by graduating summa cum laude. Her senior thesis on hydraulic system optimization had impressed everyone who read it. She'd developed innovative approaches to preventing pressure loss in complex assembly systems, exactly the kind of expertise that companies like Technovault desperately needed. But job interviews had been brutal. Her resume was flawless, her technical knowledge exceptional, but something always went wrong during face-to-face meetings. Hiring managers would study her carefully, asking probing questions about her cultural fit and communication style, code words that meant they couldn't imagine her succeeding in their world. General Motors had been her last real chance. The plant closure announcement had come just weeks after she'd finally landed an entry-level engineering position. Budget cuts and overseas manufacturing had eliminated hundreds of jobs, including hers. California had seemed like a fresh start. Silicon Valley promised innovation and opportunity, a place where talent mattered more than background. The reality had been different. Engineering positions required relevant experience that she couldn't get without someone giving her a chance. Tech companies talked about diversity, but hired people who looked like their founders. Technovault's custodial position had been supposed to be temporary, just something to pay bills while she found real engineering work. That was 3 years ago. But Keisha had never stopped being an engineer. During night shifts, she'd studied every technical manual left behind by careless engineers. She'd memorized hydraulic system specifications, calibration protocols, and maintenance schedules. She'd observed the Titan X7 prototypes with the same systematic attention her father had taught her to apply to car engines. The robots spoke to her just like those old Fords in Samuel's garage. She could hear the subtle changes in hydraulic pressure that preceded system failures. She could feel vibrations through the factory floor that indicated calibration drift. She could smell the difference between normal operating heat and components running beyond safe parameters. Her hidden notebooks contained 3 years of detailed observations that would revolutionize Technovault's operations. Failure patterns mapped with precision. Root causes identified through systematic analysis. Solutions documented with the thoroughness of a trained engineer. Because that's exactly what she was. The Titan X7 problems weren't mysterious or complex. They were basic maintenance errors compounded by systematic neglect. Wrong hydraulic fluid creating pressure inconsistencies. Calibration protocols that compensated for problems that didn't exist. Quality control procedures that missed fundamental specifications. Keisha had identified every issue months ago. She'd even attempted to share her observations with engineers who wouldn't listen. They saw a custodial worker with opinions, not a mechanical engineer with solutions. Samuel Williams had died 2 years ago, his lungs finally succumbing to decades of industrial chemicals and automotive fumes. His last words to Keisha had been a reminder of everything he'd taught her. The machine always tells the truth, baby girl. You just gotta be willing to listen. Now standing in Technovault's conference hall with cameras capturing her humiliation, Keisha carried her father's wisdom and 3 years of systematic observation. She held the key to solving problems that had stumped teams of experts and threatened a $500 million defense contract. Jonathan Whitmore had just handed her the opportunity to prove that talent doesn't depend on titles and expertise doesn't require recognition from people too arrogant to listen. The morning after Whitmore's humiliation had gone viral, it brought Technovault's darkest hour. By 8 a.m., all major tech blogs were running the story. By 9 a.m., the company's stock had dropped another 8%. By 10 a.m., the Department of Defense was threatening to cancel the $500 million contract entirely. Emergency meetings filled every conference room as executives scrambled to contain the damage. But the real crisis was happening on the factory floor, where 6 Titan X7 units, the final prototypes that would determine the company's survival, were scheduled for their ultimate test. The Pentagon's procurement committee had flown in from Washington. 50 military officials, defense contractors, and government auditors filled the demonstration area. News cameras positioned strategically around the factory floor would broadcast every moment to defense industry analysts worldwide. This was Technovault's last chance. The morning inspection had started routine. Colonel James Rodriguez, the Defense Department's lead technical evaluator, examined each Titan X7 unit with military precision. His team of engineers ran diagnostic checks, verified software calibrations, and tested hydraulic systems that had passed preliminary inspections just days earlier. Everything looked perfect. Until 9:47 a.m., when the first robot began to fail. Unit 1's hydraulic arms started moving erratically during a basic assembly sequence. Pressure gauges fluctuated wildly as the 8-foot-tall machine struggled to maintain coordination. Within minutes, the robot's movements became spastic, jerky, completely unreliable. Shut down protocol! Dr. Patterson shouted from the control station. We've got hydraulic instability in Unit 1. But the nightmare was just beginning. Unit 2 seized mid-operation, its assembly arms locking in place while building a complex engine component. Hydraulic fluid began pooling beneath the frozen machine as pressure relief valves activated automatically. Unit 3's sensors started flashing error codes that no one in the building could interpret. The robot continued operating, but its precision had vanished. Parts that should fit together perfectly were being assembled with millimeter variations that would make them useless. Within 30 minutes, all 6 Titan X7 units were failing simultaneously. Colonel Rodriguez's expression had shifted from professional interest to barely concealed disgust. Pentagon officials whispered among themselves while defense contractors took notes that would determine Technovault's future. Whitmore stood frozen at the center of the chaos, watching $300 million worth of equipment malfunction in front of the most important audience of his career. Mr. Whitmore, Colonel Rodriguez's voice cut through the factory noise like a blade. These machines are supposed to assemble critical defense components. What we're witnessing is completely unacceptable. Desperate engineers swarmed around each unit, running diagnostics that revealed nothing useful. Hydraulic specialists checked pressure lines while software experts examined code that had worked perfectly during previous tests. Every solution they attempted made the problems worse. We can reschedule the demonstration, Whitmore said, sweat beading on his forehead. Give us 48 hours to identify and resolve these issues. Negative, Rodriguez replied. The Pentagon has invested significant resources in this evaluation. We need to see working robots today, or we're moving to alternative contractors. The threat hung in the air like smoke from the overheating machines. Alternative contractors meant Boeing, Lockheed Martin, companies with proven track records and billions in resources. Technovault would be finished. That's when a reporter from Defense Technology Weekly shouted the question that changed everything. Mr. Whitmore, what about your marriage proposal from last night? Didn't you promise to marry your cleaning lady if she could fix these robots? The question hit like a bomb. Every camera in the building swiveled toward Whitmore, who realized his casual cruelty had become a public spectacle that wouldn't disappear. Keisha Williams had arrived for her day shift just as the reporter asked his question. She stood at the edge of the demonstration area, watching the chaos unfold with the same systematic attention she'd applied to every Titan X7 failure over the past 3 years. She knew exactly what was wrong with every machine. The hydraulic fluid viscosity error that had been compounding for months. The calibration protocols that were correcting for problems that didn't exist. The maintenance schedules that made everything worse. Whitmore's eyes found her in the crowd, and desperation made him double down on his cruelty. You know what? He announced, his voice carrying across the silent factory floor. I meant every word I said last night. The cameras focused on him like weapons as he pointed directly at Keisha. Keisha Williams, fix all 6 of these robots in the next 4 hours, and I will legally marry you, make you chief technical officer, and give you $5 million in company stock. This offer is witnessed, recorded, and binding. A collective gasp rose from the assembled crowd. Pentagon officials exchanged incredulous glances while reporters frantically scribbled notes. Dr. Patricia Morrison, Technovault's legal counsel, stepped forward with obvious alarm. Mr. Whitmore, you're making this declaration on live television with multiple witnesses. This constitutes a legally binding conditional contract under California law. Whitmore was too deep to retreat. Cameras were rolling, investors were watching, and his reputation hung by a thread. I stand by every word, he declared. Let's make it official. The crowd erupted in shocked murmurs. This wasn't just a technical demonstration anymore. It was a public spectacle that would determine multiple futures. Colonel Rodriguez studied the unfolding drama with military detachment. Miss Williams, are you willing to attempt this challenge? Every eye in the building focused on Keisha. The woman who'd been invisible for 3 years now stood at the center of a circus that would be dissected by media analysts for months. "I accept, mister." "Whitmore's terms," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos surrounding her. "But when I succeed, and I will, I'll be choosing my own future." Her confidence sent a ripple of surprise through the crowd. This wasn't the humiliated victim from last night's viral video. This was an engineer who'd been waiting 3 years for someone to listen. Dr. Elizabeth Carter, former MIT robotics professor and Pentagon technical advisor, stepped forward. "If she's willing to try, I'll personally oversee and validate any solution she proposes. But she gets complete access, no interference, no second-guessing." Whitmore nodded agreement, certain that his cleaning lady would fail spectacularly and provide entertainment for his wealthy audience. He had no idea that Keisha Williams was about to demonstrate engineering expertise that would revolutionize his understanding of the machines he'd been selling for years. The clock started ticking. 4 hours to diagnose and repair problems that had stumped teams of experts for months. 4 hours to save or destroy multiple careers. 4 hours to prove that talent doesn't require recognition from people too arrogant to listen. As Keisha approached the first failing Titan X7 unit, removing her cleaning gloves and rolling up her sleeves, the assembled crowd fell silent. Live television cameras captured every movement while defense officials prepared to witness either the most remarkable engineering demonstration of their careers or the most expensive failure in robotics history. The woman who'd been dismissed as invisible was about to become unforgettable. The factory floor fell silent as Keisha Williams approached the first failing Titan X7 unit. Engineers who'd spent months chasing phantom problems watched with skeptical curiosity as the woman they'd dismissed rolled up her sleeves and began her systematic assessment. While others frantically checked computer diagnostics, Keisha ignored the screens entirely. She pressed her palm against the robot's hydraulic housing, feeling vibrations that told stories no computer could interpret. She traced pressure lines with experienced fingers, listening to sounds that revealed mechanical truths. Dr. Carter observed from nearby, taking notes as Keisha worked with methodical precision. "What's your initial assessment?" the MIT professor asked. "Give me 30 minutes. Keisha replied, continuing her sensory examination. "The computers are lying to you. The machines will tell the truth." First revelation, root cause diagnosis. Keisha knelt beside Unit 1's hydraulic reservoir, drawing a small sample of fluid into a clear container. The liquid looked normal to untrained eyes, clean, proper color, no obvious contamination. But when she held it up to the light and rolled it between her fingers, her expression changed. "Dr. Patterson," she called the lead engineer. "What grade of hydraulic fluid are these units supposed to use?" Patterson consulted his tablet nervously. "HD32, according to specifications." "And what grade has been ordered for the past 8 months?" Patterson's face went pale as he accessed procurement records. "HD46, he whispered. The difference meant nothing to most observers, but Dr. Carter's eyes widened with understanding. "Viscosity differential," she murmured. Keisha nodded. "HD46 is thicker than HD32. Not enough to trigger alarms, but enough to create pressure inconsistencies that compound over operating time." She moved to the whiteboard near the control station and began calculating pressure differentials with the speed of someone who'd done this analysis hundreds of times. "Look," she said, pointing to her equations. "Higher viscosity creates resistance in narrow passages. The system compensates by increasing pump pressure. That triggers recalibration protocols that assume electronic faults instead of mechanical ones." The assembled engineers stared at calculations that revealed their 8-month blind spot. Dr. Patterson ran verification checks that confirmed Keisha's analysis with devastating accuracy. "Every diagnostic we've run has been chasing shadows," Patterson admitted. "We never questioned the fluid specifications because procurement said they were correct." Keisha pulled out one of her hidden notebooks, pages filled with 3 years of systematic observations. I documented the correlation between fluid deliveries and failure patterns. The problem started exactly when your supplier switched grades without updating your specifications. Colonel Rodriguez stepped closer, studying the data with military precision. You've been tracking this for how long? 8 months for this specific issue, 3 years for overall system behavior. Dr. Carter examined Keisha's notebook with growing amazement. This is graduate-level analysis applied with remarkable precision. How did you learn to do this? My father taught me to listen to machines, Keisha replied simply. The rest is just engineering. Second revelation, calibration protocol errors. With the hydraulic issue identified, Keisha moved to the deeper problem that had prevented previous solutions. She accessed Unit 2's control system, her fingers moving across the interface with surprising familiarity. The wrong fluid caused systematic overcompensation in calibration algorithms, she explained to the growing crowd of observers. Every time your technicians tried to fix performance issues, they made adjustments based on false data. She pulled up diagnostic logs that showed months of incremental calibration changes. Each adjustment had seemed logical at the time, but Keisha's analysis revealed a pattern of compounding errors. Look at these sensor readings, she said, pointing to historical data. Your pressure sensors were reporting accurate values, but your calibration software was interpreting them as errors because it expected different fluid behavior. The engineers watched in stunned silence as Keisha demonstrated how their automated systems had been fighting themselves for months. Every fix made things worse because you were correcting for a problem that didn't exist, she continued. The real problem was hiding in your parts inventory. She began systematic recalibration of Unit 2, downloading original firmware and rebuilding configuration files with mathematical precision. Her movements were confident, efficient, the work of someone who understood these machines better than their original programmers. Where did you learn our software systems? Dr. Patterson asked. I read the manuals you leave lying around, Keisha replied without looking up from her work. 3 years of night shifts gives you time to study. As she worked, she explained each step to the assembled engineers who took detailed notes. Pentagon officials began asking technical questions, which she answered while continuing her systematic repairs. The hydraulic pressure variations triggered false sensor readings, she said, adjusting threshold parameters. Your automated recalibration created cascading errors because it was solving the wrong equation. Unit 2's movements became smoother as Keisha restored proper specifications. The robot's assembly sequences regained precision, demonstrating capabilities that had been missing for months. Dr. Carter made real-time observations to her military colleagues. She's not just fixing these machines, she's restoring them to performance levels we haven't seen since initial deployment. Third revelation, prevention protocol. 2 hours into her 4-hour deadline, Keisha had 3 Titan X7 units running flawlessly, but her most impressive demonstration was yet to come. From her personal notebooks, she produced comprehensive documentation that represented 3 years of systematic analysis. Failure patterns mapped with scientific precision, maintenance schedules optimized for actual operational behavior rather than theoretical specifications, quality control protocols that would prevent future problems. This isn't just about fixing today's crisis, she announced to the assembled crowd. This is about revolutionizing how you understand these machines. She outlined modified maintenance schedules based on real-world operational patterns rather than manufacturer recommendations. Her analysis showed how small changes in inspection timing could prevent 90% of mechanical failures. Your current protocols check the wrong things at the wrong intervals, she explained. You're servicing components that rarely fail while ignoring systems that need constant attention. Colonel Rodriguez studied her documentation with growing interest. These prevention protocols could apply to our entire robotics program. Keisha nodded. The principles work for any complex hydraulic system. I've identified early warning signs that your sensors already collect, but your software ignores. She demonstrated predictive monitoring techniques using existing equipment. By analyzing vibration patterns, thermal variations, and pressure fluctuations that the Titan X7 units recorded automatically, she could predict component failures weeks before they occurred. "Your robots generate terabytes of data that you're not using," she said, pulling up monitoring displays that showed previously invisible patterns. "Every machine tells you when it needs attention. You just have to know how to listen." Her cost-benefit analysis showed $50 million in annual savings through optimized maintenance and reduced downtime. More importantly, her protocols would ensure that defense contracts could be fulfilled with absolute reliability. "Miss Williams," Dr. Carter announced to the crowd, "in 30 years of robotics engineering, I've rarely seen this level of diagnostic brilliance. You haven't just fixed these machines, you've revolutionized how we understand their operation." The final demonstration. With 30 minutes remaining in her deadline, Keisha brought all 6 Titan X7 units online simultaneously. The robots that had been failing catastrophically just hours earlier now operated in perfect synchronization. The assembled crowd watched in amazement as 6 massive machines performed complex assembly tasks that had been impossible for months. Their movements were fluid, precise, exactly what the Pentagon had expected when they'd signed the original contract. Hydraulic systems maintained steady pressure across all units. Error codes that had stumped experts for months had vanished entirely. The robots performed at specifications that exceeded original factory testing. "All units operating at 103% efficiency, Dr. Patterson announced from the control station. "Zero errors, perfect coordination." Colonel Rodriguez made the official determination. "These machines now exceed our contract requirements. If this performance level can be maintained, the defense contract is approved." But the most remarkable aspect wasn't the technical achievement. It was watching a woman who'd been invisible for 3 years demonstrate expertise that surpassed teams of recognized experts. Keisha stood quietly confident as her systematic analysis and patient observation were finally validated in the most public way possible. The notebooks she'd hidden in her locker had become the foundation for engineering solutions that would revolutionize an entire industry. The machines hummed with perfect mechanical rhythm, their synchronized operation a symphony of precision that proved talent doesn't require recognition from people too arrogant to listen. Jonathan Whitmore stared at the flawless demonstration with dawning horror. The woman he'd dismissed as entertainment had just demonstrated engineering mastery that far exceeded his own understanding. His marriage proposal was no longer a joke. It was a legally binding commitment to someone who'd just saved his empire while exposing his complete ignorance of the technology that built his fortune. The factory floor held its breath as Colonel Rodriguez prepared the ultimate test. 4 hours had passed since Whitmore's desperate gamble, and 6 Titan X7 units stood ready for judgment. "Miss Williams," the colonel announced, his voice carrying across the silent demonstration area, "we're going to run all 6 units simultaneously at maximum operational capacity for 30 minutes. These are the exact conditions that caused your previous failures." Keisha nodded calmly, her confidence unshaken by the pressure. Around her, 50 Pentagon officials, defense contractors, and media representatives positioned themselves for the most important robotics demonstration in TechnoVault's history. Dr. Carter stepped forward with official documentation. "This stress test will determine whether the defense contract proceeds or dies. Are you ready?" "The machines are ready," Keisha replied. "They've been telling you they were ready for months." "You just weren't listening." At exactly 2:47 p.m., all 6 Titan X7 units began their synchronized demonstration. The transformation was breathtaking. Where chaos had reigned just hours earlier, perfect mechanical harmony now filled the factory floor. 6 massive robots moved with choreographed precision, their hydraulic arms executing complex assembly sequences without hesitation. Each unit built intricate engine components with tolerances measured in thousandths of inches. The sound was beautiful, smooth, consistent, powerful. No grinding gears, no pressure relief valves, no error alarms. Just the steady rhythm of precision engineering operating exactly as designed. Keisha walked between the units like a conductor overseeing her orchestra. She touched hydraulic housings that ran cool and steady. She listened to pump motors that hummed with perfect consistency. She watched pressure gauges that held rock-solid readings across all systems. "Hydraulic pressure is stable across all units, Doctor," Patterson announced from the control station, his voice filled with amazement. "Temperature readings are normal, calibration holding within 0.01% tolerance." The assembled crowd watched in stunned silence as months of catastrophic failures became flawless operations. Defense officials who'd arrived expecting disaster now witnessed technical excellence that exceeded their highest expectations. 15 minutes into the test, Doctor. Carter made live observations for the Pentagon Committee. All units maintain 103% efficiency, better than original factory specifications, error rates holding at absolute zero. But the most dramatic moment was yet to come. As the 20-minute mark approached, legal counsel, Dr. Morrison stepped forward with documents that would change everything. "Miss Williams," she announced, loud enough for cameras to capture, "you have technically fulfilled all conditions of Mr. Whitmore's public contract. The marriage offer is now legally enforceable under California law." The words hit the crowd like electricity. Live news anchors provided breathless commentary as history unfolded in real time. "We're witnessing something unprecedented," reported Defense Technology Weekly. "Keisha Williams has not only solved an engineering crisis that stumped teams of experts, but she's also earned the legal right to marry billionaire Jonathan Whitmore under the terms of his own public declaration." Whitmore stood frozen at the edge of the demonstration area, watching his casual cruelty transform into binding legal obligation. The woman he'd humiliated with a marriage joke now held his personal and professional fate in her hands. 25 minutes. The Titan X 7 units continued their flawless performance, building component after component with mechanical perfection. Each successful assembly sequence drove another nail into the coffin of Whitmore's arrogance. Colonel Rodriguez conducted final verification checks with military precision. Dimensional accuracy, surface finish quality, assembly tolerances, every measurement exceeded defense contract requirements. "These machines are performing beyond anything we've seen in 2 years of evaluation," he announced to his committee. "If this represents sustainable performance, Technovault has exceeded all our expectations." 30 minutes. The stress test concluded with all 6 units operating in perfect harmony. The factory floor erupted in applause as engineers, defense officials, and media representatives acknowledged an achievement that bordered on miraculous. 6 massive robots that had been failing catastrophically just hours earlier now demonstrated capabilities that would revolutionize military manufacturing. But beneath the celebration lay a more profound transformation. The power dynamic that had defined Technovault for years had been completely reversed. Jonathan Whitmore, who'd built his fortune on arrogance and dismissive cruelty, now faced a woman whose expertise dwarfed his own understanding. Miss Williams called a reporter from the crowd, "Will you hold Mr. Whitmore to his marriage proposal?" Every camera in the building focused on Keisha as she stood surrounded by the machines that had validated her 3 years of patient observation. The robots hummed quietly behind her, their perfect operation a testament to engineering excellence that required no recognition from people too arrogant to listen. The moment of truth had arrived. Would she accept the marriage proposal that had started as mockery? Would she claim the victory that was legally, morally, and professionally hers? Keisha Williams looked directly into the cameras, knowing her words would be heard around the world, and prepared to make a choice that would define not just her future, but the future of workplace dignity everywhere. The factory floor fell silent as Keisha Williams faced the cameras that would broadcast her decision worldwide. Jonathan Whitmore stood nearby, his earlier arrogance replaced by nervous anticipation of consequences he'd never imagined. "Mr. Whitmore," Keisha began, her voice carrying across the hushed demonstration area, "you made your marriage proposal as a joke, intending to humiliate me in front of the world. You never expected someone like me to possess the expertise to meet your challenge." Every reporter leaned forward, sensing historic words about to be spoken. "While you are now legally obligated to honor your word," she continued, "I choose to decline your marriage proposal." The crowd erupted in spontaneous applause. Her dignified rejection carried more power than any acceptance could have achieved. She'd turned his weapon of humiliation into a platform for professional triumph. "However," Keisha's voice rose above the noise, "I will accept the chief technical officer position with $5 million in company stock and a $400,000 annual salary, as those terms reflect my professional value rather than your personal mockery." Whitmore stepped forward, forced by cameras and legal witnesses to make his public acknowledgement. "Miss Williams has demonstrated extraordinary expertise and professionalism. I deeply regret my inappropriate behavior and am honored that she's chosen to join our leadership team." The recognition came too late to erase his humiliation, but it sealed Keisha's victory. Dr. Carter immediately announced additional opportunities. "I'm extending a fellowship offer from MIT's robotics lab. Your diagnostic innovations deserve academic recognition." Colonel Rodriguez followed with Pentagon approval. "The Department of Defense is offering a $2 million annual consulting contract. We want your expertise applied to our entire robotics program." Within minutes, 3 competing firms attempted recruitment offers. Engineering journals requested articles about her methods. Industry leaders who'd never heard her name now fought for her attention. Technovault's stock price rebounded 40% before market close. Headlines around the world proclaimed, "Cleaning lady saves billionaire's company, rejects his marriage proposal." But the most satisfying moment came when Keisha addressed the assembled crowd one final time. "I've proven that competence speaks louder than credentials. Talent doesn't require permission from people too arrogant to recognize it." Her words would be quoted in business schools for decades, a reminder that expertise exists everywhere, if only we're humble enough to listen. Jonathan Whitmore's marriage proposal mockery became the defining symbol of his spectacular downfall. Within hours, the viral video compilation had exploded across social media. His arrogant proposal, Keisha's technical mastery, and her dignified rejection garnered 50 million views in 48 hours under the hashtag #MarriageProposalBackfire. The video became a masterclass in how prejudice destroys itself. Every frame captured Whitmore's transformation from smug billionaire to humiliated executive, while Keisha evolved from dismissed victim to engineering hero. The contrast was devastating. Technovault's board of directors convened emergency sessions as the story dominated business news worldwide. Security footage revealed years of Whitmore's discriminatory behavior, dismissive comments, casual cruelty, systematic exclusion of valuable employees based on appearance rather than ability. The marriage proposal incident demonstrates fundamental lack of judgment, board chairwoman Margaret Carter announced during a televised press conference. Such behavior is incompatible with corporate leadership in the 21st century. Within 72 hours, the board voted unanimously to remove Whitmore as CEO. The man who'd built his reputation on aggressive leadership was fired for the same arrogance that had once made him seem invincible. Harvard Business School moved quickly to immortalize the incident. The case study titled, "When Prejudice Becomes Legally Binding, Leadership Failure and Unconscious Bias," became required reading for MBA programs nationwide. Whitmore's name became synonymous with executive overreach and workplace discrimination. The financial consequences were swift and brutal. Whitmore lost his $15 million annual salary, forfeited $50 million in performance bonuses, and faced reputation damage that made him unemployable at any comparable level. His legal team charged $500,000 just to navigate the marriage contract implications. Corporate lawyers nationwide began warning executives about Whitmore clauses, legally binding public statements made in arrogance. The incident fundamentally changed how businesses approached public communications and employee relations. Other tech companies rushed to implement Keisha Williams protocols, systematic processes for recognizing employee expertise regardless of position or background. The marriage proposal had accidentally triggered industry-wide diversity initiatives that would benefit thousands of overlooked workers. Business commentators noted the exquisite irony. Whitmore's attempt to mock a black woman through marriage ended with her rejecting him after proving her superiority, wrote Forbes. The power dynamic couldn't have been more thoroughly reversed. Media analysis revealed deeper patterns. Whitmore's behavior wasn't isolated. It represented systemic problems across Silicon Valley, where talent was consistently overlooked due to unconscious bias. His public humiliation became a catalyst for conversations about workplace dignity that had been needed for decades. 6 months later, the transformation was complete. Whitmore worked as a mid-level consultant, earning $200,000 annually, just 5% of his previous income. Industry insiders reported that his dating profile included the disclaimer, "Please note, any engineering challenges discussed are not marriage proposals." Meanwhile, Keisha Williams graced magazine covers as the most sought-after engineering executive in Silicon Valley. Her rejection of Whitmore's proposal had inspired countless workers to demand professional respect over personal accommodation. The phrase, "I choose to decline," became a rallying cry for workplace dignity. Women facing inappropriate behavior used Keisha's words to assert their right to professional treatment. The marriage proposal that was meant to diminish her had become a symbol of empowerment. The ultimate irony was perfect. The woman Whitmore had tried to humiliate through fake marriage became one of the most respected figures in American business, while he became a cautionary tale about the price of arrogance. His attempt to make her invisible had made her unforgettable. His joke about marriage had become his professional obituary. His moment of casual cruelty had created a legacy of justice that would inspire generations. 1 year later, Keisha Williams appeared on the cover of Engineering Today magazine with the headline, "The Woman Who Turned a Marriage Joke into Industry Revolution." Under her leadership, Technovault had become Silicon Valley's most innovative and inclusive technology company. The Titan X7 robots now operated flawlessly in defense facilities worldwide, their success built on protocols that Keisha had developed during those invisible night shifts. Her Dignity in Engineering Scholarship Fund had awarded grants to over 200 underrepresented students. The phrase, "I choose to decline," had become a cultural touchstone for workplace respect, inspiring millions to demand recognition for their expertise. Keisha remained proudly single, focused on groundbreaking research that was reshaping robotics engineering. Her father's wisdom that machines tell the truth if you know how to listen had become the foundation of revolutionary diagnostic techniques used across multiple industries. Sometimes the most insulting challenge becomes your greatest opportunity. When someone tries to diminish you, let your competence speak louder than their prejudice. If this story inspired you to stand up for your worth, there's a detail only sharp-eyed viewers will notice at minute 4:32. Watch again and tell us what Keisha was really doing. Would you have had the courage to accept Whitmore's challenge knowing the whole world was watching? Share your thoughts below and subscribe to Black Soul Stories for more stories where dignity defeats discrimination and hidden talent changes everything.